Hey guys, it's Kingdom Orange 2 here, and welcome back to my channel. So the next fairy tale I'll be taking a look at is Thumbelina by Hans Christian Andersen. I'll first start off by recapping the story, comparing the various versions to it, and then ending the video with my rankings. And like always, if there's any Thumbelinas that I've missed, feel free to comment them down below. Alright, so now before a toad makes us marry her son, let's get right to it. The fairy tale. Our story begins with a peasant woman who desperately wishes to have a child. She seeks advice from a witch who gives her a magical barley seed. After the peasant woman plants the seed, the next morning it sprouts into a tiny girl who the peasant woman names Thumbelina. Unfortunately, one night, Thumbelina is kidnapped by a toad who wants the young girl to marry her son. Luckily though, with the aid of a fish and a butterfly, Thumbelina is set free from the toads and carried down the stream. However, Thumbelina is captured once again by a beetle, but he eventually abandons her after his friends mock Thumbelina's appearance. For months, Thumbelina lives alone in nature, but when winter comes, she seeks shelter with a field mouse. One day, while visiting the mouse's neighbor, Thumbelina stumbles across an injured bird. Every night, she begins to secretly tend to the bird, helping him regain his strength. Eventually, the bird is nursed back to full health and flies away, promising to visit Thumbelina in the future. At the end of the winter, the old mouse suggests Thumbelina marry the mole, but Thumbelina is repulsed by this idea, hating the fact that the mole lives underground, never seeing the sun or sky. Eventually, though, Thumbelina is left with little choice but to marry her neighbor. However, on her wedding day, her old friend the bird returns to Thumbelina and carries her away. They end up in a field of flowers where Thumbelina meets a handsome fairy prince. The prince asks Thumbelina for her hand in marriage, and she agrees, with Thumbelina receiving a pair of her own fairy wings. He also decides to give her the new name of Maya. The fairy tale then has somewhat of a meta ending, with the bird flying away and landing in a nest in Denmark, where he recounts his story to the writer of fairy tales, which of course is Hans Christian Andersen himself. Now real quickly before we move on, Tom Thumb has nothing to do with Thumbelina. The story of Tom Thumb is actually 200 years older than Thumbelina and was published in England in 1621. The only reason I am bringing him up is because in a lot of these movies, the writers will often combine their stories together, but there's really no relation between the two characters. Alright, so first on this list is The Adventures of Tom Thumb and Thumbelina. In 2002, The Adventures of Tom Thumb and Thumbelina was released by Miramax Home Entertainment. The movie begins with the narrator explaining that as babies, both Tom Thumb and Thumbelina were kidnapped by a circus ringmaster. Tom Thumb, though, managed to escape and was found and raised by an old man named Ben. At the same time, Thumbelina grows up working in the ringmaster's traveling circus, performing along with his other oddities. One day, both Tom Thumb and Thumbelina meet each other after they find themselves lost in the wilderness. They start to develop feelings for one another, but after an argument, Thumbelina is captured and taken to the blind Mole King, who wants Thumbelina to become his bride. Luckily though, Thumbelina meets and frees a sparrow named Albertine, and the two of them manage to get away. After a while and another abduction, Tom Thumb and Thumbelina are reunited, but during a celebration, the Mole King captures them and forces Thumbelina to marry him. Believing that Tom Thumb will be hurt if she doesn't comply, Thumbelina agrees to his hand in marriage. Luckily though, Tom Thumb is able to free himself and rescue Thumbelina, and a battle ensues, ending with the Mole King falling off the side of a mountain. Albertine then flies Thumbelina and Tom Thumb to a kingdom of small people, where we find out that Thumbelina was a missing princess of this land. The movie then ends with Thumbelina reuniting with her parents and marrying Tom Thumb. Barbie. In 2009, Mattel Entertainment released the direct-to-DVD film Barbie Presents Thumbelina. Now in all honesty, the only thing this movie shares with the original fairy tale is its name. In this film, Thumbelina is a twillerbee, or wingless fairies who use their magic to help plants grow. She, along with her friends Janessa and Priscilla, are anticipating the birth of the twiller babies and hope to use their makeshift gliders to fly over the twiller buds when they sprout. Unfortunately though, Thumbelina and her friends are captured by a giant claw, and when they wake up, they find themselves inside of a girl named McKenna's room. Here they learn that McKenna's family is planning on building a factory over the twiller babies' field, and they decide to split up. Thumbelina stays, hoping to convince McKenna to get her parents to stop construction, while she sends her friends home to try and disrupt the workers. Initially, McKenna is very reluctant to listen to Thumbelina, wanting to use her to impress her frenemy Violet. However, after she realizes Thumbelina is her true friend, McKenna agrees to convince her parents, and eventually they're able to get her parents to stop construction after Thumbelina reveals herself to them. Luckily, McKenna's parents make it to the field just in time before the head of construction, Myron, plows the field down. Everyone watches as the twillerbuds sprout, and the movie ends with McKenna's parents turning their field into a preserved nature park. Don Bluth. Don Bluth, who's best known for directing and producing movies like All Dogs Go to Heaven and An American Tail, came out with his film Hans Christian Andersen's Thumbelina in 1994. And while this movie was actually a bomb at the box office, it's probably the most popular and culturally significant version of Thumbelina people know. Now, in this film, a while after Thumbelina is born, she begins to crave companionship from someone her own size, and one night is visited by a fairy prince named Cornelius. They spend time together and fall in love, but unfortunately, while Thumbelina is asleep, she gets kidnapped by Miss Toad and her son Grundle. Now, the movie is mostly the same as the fairy tale, except for two more important plot changes. First is that Thumbelina meets a swallow named Giacomo after he rescues her from the toads. Also, throughout the movie, Cornelius has somewhat of his own journey trying to find Thumbelina. In the end, though, Giacomo is able to fly Thumbelina to the Vale of the Fairies, where she and Cornelius reunite, and Thumbelina grows her own pair of fairy wings. Ever After High. While Thumbelina doesn't make an appearance in this franchise, the role of Thumbelina is played by her daughter, Nina Thumble. Now, since Nina was introduced towards the end of the franchise's run, she's only the subject of one webisode. In the episode titled Thumbelievable, the girls are upset after their field trip is canceled, so Raven uses a charm to shrink them down to Nina's size. Nina shows her friends around the nooks and crannies of the school, but when they want to grow back to their original size, Raven realizes she left the charm on top of the desk. Luckily though, a cat named Rascal has been following them around the whole time, and he is able to jump on top of the desk and push the charm down onto the floor, allowing the girls to revert back to their normal size. Fairytale Police Department. In this episode of Fairytale Police Department, when the miller and his wife wake up to check on their barley seed the witch gave them, they discover that the plant they got was actually a turnip. Since the detectives believe that someone has taken Thumbelina, they begin to question many suspects, including Tom Thumb and the miller himself, but come up with no leads. At this station, they overhear how Puss in Boots was ripped off by the witch, and Johnny and Christine go to the magic shop to confront her. However, they realize that she didn't do anything initially and accidentally mixed up her numbers, giving the farmer the barley seeds and the miller and his wife the turnips. Christine and Johnny then rush to the farmer to stop him from destroying Thumbelina's flower, and the episode ends with the miller saving her right in the nick of time. The Fairytaler. The Fairytaler is a Danish animated TV show that produces episodes based on fairy tales by Hans Christian Andersen. In their version of Thumbelina, similar to the Don Bluth film, she meets the swallow before she seeks shelter in the field mouse's home. However, since this version of Thumbelina has a huge fear of flying, when the swallow asks her if she wants to fly north with him before winter, Thumbelina refuses. Fortunately though, she was right not to, as the swallow ended up never making it north and actually crashed into the tunnel near where Mr. Mole lives. In the end though, the swallow is able to take Thumbelina to meet the prince, and after they marry and Thumbelina gets her own wings, it seems like Thumbelina finally overcame her fear of flying. Funky Fables. So Funky Fables is a segment that aired on the Japanese television show Hirake Ponkiki. Usually each episode has more of a humorous take on the fairy tale, but the most surprising thing to me was that this episode was probably the closest to the original fairy tale out of any entry on this list. I mean, there's literally nothing changed from the fairy tale other than the fact that the fairy prince doesn't call her Maya at the end. Also, I was a bit surprised because every other episode of this show I've watched had someone talk like Elvis, but there was nobody who did that here. Golden Films. Golden Films released their own version of the fairytale Thumbelina in 1992. In the movie, Thumbelina and her father are little people who live alongside a large dam. Thumbelina's father, who is the dam's watchkeeper, worries about the cracks in the foundation and thinks when winter comes the snow will melt and cause the dam to overflow. Wanting to avert this disaster, he sends his daughter Thumbelina to go to the Garden of Tulips and warn the prince to send people to help them fix the dam's holes. Early on in the journey, Thumbelina falls asleep inside of a flower, which is plucked by an old witch. The witch then gives the flower to a woman who's always wished for a child. After this, the movie follows the fairy tale's main plot structure, with Thumbelina getting kidnapped by a toad and so forth. In the end though, the swallow is able to fly Thumbelina back to the dam, and with the help of his bird friends along with the prince's soldiers, everyone is able to fix the dam's foundation before it overflows. Also, the prince is so thankful for Thumbelina saving their people's lives that he proposes to her and they get married. Goldie and Bear. Thumbelina makes her first and only appearance in the Goldie and Bear episode titled Thumbelina's Wild Ride. In the episode, since the fairy godmother is unable to babysit, Bear's parents hire Thumbelina. Thumbelina constantly reminds Goldie and Bear that despite her small size, she's able to do things for herself. However, when Goldie still tries to help her get milk out of the fridge, she ends up knocking Thumbelina into the kitchen drain. Goldie and Bear then follow the drain to the river and struggle to stop Thumbelina from falling down a waterfall. Luckily though, with the assistance of Larry the Crow, they are able to rescue her and return back home. Yeah, I guess this episode's message was to not judge people by their size or whatever. I don't know. Don't ask me about morals in media because they always fly over my head. GoodTimes Entertainment. In 1996, GoodTimes Entertainment released Tom Thumb Meets Thumbelina. In the movie, Tom Thumb and Thumbelina are the prince and princess of the meadow, but Tom Thumb is kidnapped as a young child. Years later, while Thumbelina becomes ruler of the meadow, Tom Thumb is raised by a human king named Richard. Richard's son Medwin wants to build a bigger and newer castle in the meadow, but his father refuses because he is a fond lover of nature. However, since Medwin doesn't want to give up so easily, he pays off his father's enemy, the Saxons, to capture King Richard and lock him away. They do, and Medwin is able to trick everyone into believing King Richard has been kidnapped and also begins construction on the new castle. At the same time, when Thumbelina gets word of this, she tries to get Medwin to stop, but he refuses. However, she meets and teams up with Tom Thumb, and eventually Thumbelina and her fairy friends are able to chase away the Saxons from invading King Richard's kingdom. Thumbelina and Tom Thumb also successfully free King Richard from his prison cell, and in the end, the two get married, uniting their kingdoms forever. Happily ever after, fairy tales for every child. So this version of Thumbelina is set within a village in the Amazon rainforest. Now the episode starts out almost exactly the same as the fairy tale, with a toad kidnapping Thumbelina to marry her son. However, in this version, Thumbelina finds the toad's son a lover and leaves, where she meets and develops feelings for a butterfly named Mario Mariposa. The butterfly flies away, and Thumbelina eventually reunites with the toad's mother after she saves Thumbelina from a waterfall. The two of them become friends, and one day while shopping, they are both kidnapped by bats. The Bat King plans to marry Thumbelina, and while showing her his butterfly collection, Thumbelina finds a captured Mario. She frees him, and on Thumbelina's wedding day, he returns with an army of glowworms, which blind the Bat King's army and allow Thumbelina to be set free. The episode then ends with Thumbelina returning home to her mother, where she finds out that she planted the petals of the flower Thumbelina was born in, and there is now an entire village of people who are Thumbelina's size. Nippon Animation. So in 1992, a Japanese company called Nippon Animation released a 26-episode series about Thumbelina called Thumbelina, A Magical Story. Now this show was shortened down into an hour-and-a-half film that I watched because in all fairness, I was not about to watch 26 episodes of this thing. Anyways, the film follows a young girl named Maya, whose mother struggles to control her mischievous behavior. The mother seeks the help from an old witch, who gives her a copy of the fairy tale Thumbelina. While Maya's mother is reading from the story, she ends up falling asleep, and Maya is suddenly shrunken and transported inside of the book. Maya is then greeted by a witch named Angela, who tells her that she's inside of her mother's dream world. She also explains that the only way for Maya to get out is to travel south and find the Crystal Prince, who will help her return home. Now, while watching this movie, not only did it follow most of the plot lines from Thumbelina, but you could tell the writers took heavy inspiration from The Wizard of Oz. For example, when Maya first arrives in the dream world, she's given a pair of red shoes by Angela. Also, throughout most of the movie, she's trying to outrun a wicked witch named Cassandra. Eventually, though, Maya makes it to the land of the south, and the battle ensues with Cassandra. However, after Cassandra falls and Maya decides to catch her, the witch reveals that the role she's played in trying to teach Maya a lesson is now over, and the movie ends with the Crystal Prince sending Maya home, where she greets her mother, who has finally woken up from her dream. Regal Academy. So this show is one of the reasons why I had to mention earlier that Tom Thumb and Thumbelina were separate fairy tales. At Regal Academy, there's a student named Lena Tom Thumb, who Rose initially refers to as the granddaughter of Thumbelina. However, if you go onto the Regal Academy website, it says she's the granddaughter of Tom Thumb. Even more confusing is that later in the series, we actually meet Thumbelina, who Lena introduces as her cousin. Honestly, this is probably all over the place because the writers wanted to backtrack at the last minute. Either way though, Thumbelina and Lena Tom Thumb aren't really significant enough characters in this show for me to care all that much. Shrek. Thumbelina makes a very small cameo in Shrek 2. During the scene where Joan Rivers is announcing the arrivals on the red carpet, Thumbelina and Tom Thumb appear but are accidentally swept into a dustpan. Timeless Tales. Timeless Tales was a 1990 TV series hosted by Olivia Newton-John. Similar to many other versions of Thumbelina on this list, Thumbelina meets the swallow early on in this episode, and she reunites with him during the winter. After the swallow is nursed back to health, he twice offers to fly Thumbelina away, but she refuses. However, after Mr. Mole refers to Thumbelina as a curse on their wedding day, she finally allows the swallow to carry her away, and he takes her to meet the fairy prince. Also, one more thing I want to say is that this episode constantly uses the word friend instead of daughter. Like, Thumbelina's mother is her friend, and the peasant woman wished for a best friend. Which, honestly, I thought was a weird change to the script, but I don't know, maybe the writers think having a flower child out of wedlock was a bit taboo. Okay, so last on this list is Toei. In 1978, Toei Animation created their own full-length anime film based on Thumbelina. Now, in this movie, similar to Don Bluth, Thumbelina meets the prince before she's kidnapped by the toads, and he begs her to come to the land of tulips. However, Thumbelina kinda ignores him, so the prince just gives her a magical necklace and promises to visit her again soon. Also, another change to the fairy tale is that in this movie, Thumbelina has a bumblebee friend named Buzzer, who accompanies her on most of her journey until his wings freeze and he has to hibernate for the rest of the winter. Eventually, though, she's reunited with Buzzer after the swallow takes her to the land of tulips, and the movie ends with Thumbelina marrying the prince. Alright, so now it's time for the rankings. Number 16 is Shrek. She doesn't talk, and she's barely in the movie. Number 15 is Fairytale Police Department. She doesn't talk either, and she's barely in her own episode. Number 14 is Regal Academy. Both Lena Tom Thumb and her grandmother cousin Thumbelina are so irrelevant in this show that it's really hard to rank them any higher. However, I think both of their designs are kinda cute. Number 13 is Funky Fables. There's nothing really bad about this Thumbelina, but I'm just not really into the show's chibi design for most of its characters. Number 12 is Nippon Animation. Maya probably has the most annoying voice out of all Thumbelinas on this list. However, I don't think she really deserved to have to go through that hell of her mother's strange dream world just to learn a lesson. Honestly, maybe some therapy and a timeout would have sufficed. Number 11 is Toei. I really love this Thumbelina's dress, but her personality is so bland in this movie. She sort of blends into the background among the other Thumbelinas on this list. I've probably watched this movie twice now and couldn't tell you one unique thing about her. Number 10 is the Fairytaler. Similar to Toei's Thumbelina, this Thumbelina is pretty bland and also has a decent design. However, I ranked her higher because I liked how the writers created this storyline of Thumbelina being afraid of flying, and that's why she decided not to go with the Swallow North. The only issue though is that Thumbelina just randomly gets over her fear once she gets wings, so I guess the writers just lazily forgot about this storyline. Number 9 is GoodTimes Entertainment. Her design is pretty cute, and I love how in this movie she's a princess because I love a good princess. The only thing I couldn't understand was why the animators never gave this Thumbelina wings. I at least thought at the end when she and Tom Thumb got married they would each get a set of wings, but I guess the animators wanted to make them just two random wingless fairies. Number 8 is Golden Films. The only thing I can say about this Thumbelina was that I don't understand how the producers of this film were not sued for the scene in which Thumbelina literally sings the song Edelweiss from The Sound of Music, because I know this cheap studio didn't pay for the rights. Also, why is she even singing Edelweiss if this story takes place in Denmark? Number 7 is Goldie Bear. I'm not really crazy about this Thumbelina's design, and I really don't think Debbie Ryan's voice fits this character well. However, her adventurous and resourceful personality helped this Thumbelina really stand out to me. I guess though Bear's parents didn't appreciate her babysitting style because we never see her in the rest of the series. Number 6 is The Adventures of Tom Thumb and Thumbelina. This Thumbelina has a mediocre design, and I wasn't crazy about her angsty teenage personality. Honestly though, as the movie went on, she really grew on me, and I really enjoyed Jennifer Love Hewitt's voice acting in this film. However, what the actual hell is this hairstyle though? Number 5 is Timeless Tales. So I've yet to mention this, but typically I don't like when a Thumbelina's design is modeled after a young girl, because it just makes the whole fact that so many older animals try to marry her a bit creepy. However, this Thumbelina is so adorable. I absolutely love her singing voice and every single dress the animators put her in. The only thing I still don't understand is why Thumbelina's friend wished for a flower child. Like, lady, meet some friends at church or something. Number 4 is Happily Ever After, Fairy Tales for Every Child. Okay, so first and foremost, I do not like this Thumbelina's voice. Sorry, Rosie Perez fans, I just didn't think it worked well here. However, I absolutely adore this Thumbelina's design. I love the Amazonian influence with the face paint, and I like how her dress was made out of leaves. Honestly, the real star of this show, though, was the Toad's mother. She's voiced by Harry Fierstein, who played Edna Turnblad in Hairspray Live, and I would absolutely watch an entire series dedicated to just her character. Number 3 is Ever After High. We practically know next to nothing about Nina Thumble, but I'm absolutely so enchanted by her design, I refuse to place her any lower on this list. First of all, the blonde hair with her skin tone looks so beautiful, especially alongside her floral crown and dress. I also really love that the writers gave her the ability to grow and shrink whenever she wants to. That was such a very interesting character trait. My only complaint, though, is why on earth did they name her Nina Thumble and not Lena Thumb? Her name isn't Thumbelina, Mattel. I really need an explanation for this. Number 2 is Barbie. So I probably ranked Barbie's Thumbelina so high purely just for nostalgia. I honestly never understood, though, why this movie got so much hate. Maybe because Barbie isn't really a character in it. However, I think that the modern storyline was actually really well written, and this Thumbelina's design is very stunning. My one issue, though, that I've had forever is why did they get rid of the long hair that we see on Thumbelina's DVD art? I think they probably did this to save time and money on animation, but without it, Thumbelina looks a bit like a disheveled 35-year-old woman in some of her scenes. Number 1 is Dawn Bluth. I mean, is anyone truly shocked here? For starters, her design is so wonderful. I honestly don't know why now that Disney owns this movie, they don't market her in merchandise, especially since I think her look is overall very unique and would stand out among the Disney princesses. Also, Jodie Benson does such a fantastic job with both Thumbelina's voice and singing. I will say though, I was never really crazy about this film, but I can't take away how overall great Dawn Bluth's Thumbelina is. If you liked this video today and want to see more content in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see you soon. Bye!